Chanukah, let's begin. So in the Al Hanisim, which is the insert, the prayer that we say throughout the 8 days of Chanukah, we say this in our daily 3 times a day Amidah. It's added at the end of the Amidah, and we say it also in the grace after meals. If a person would eat bread and say Birkat HaMazon, it's there as well. And of course, in the Musaf prayer of Shabbos Chanukah. And of course, there's Chodesh Chanukah. So let's see what it says. It begins with an introductory statement, which you would say on both Chanukah and Purim, and it goes like this: Al Hanisim, and we thank you for the miracles, for the redemption, for the mighty deeds, for the saving acts, and for the wonders which you have wrought for our ancestors in those days at this time. And then on Chanukah we have one insert, Purim, another text, of course. Let's listen to the text that we say on Chanukah. In the days of Matisyohu, the son of Yochanan, the high priest, the Chashmonoim, he was a Chashmonoi from the house of Chashmonoi, and his sons, his 5 sons, when the wicked Hellenic government, that's Greek, rose up against your people Israel to make them forget your Torah and violate the decrees of your will. But you, God, in your abounding mercy, stood by them in time of their distress. You waged their battles, defended their rights, and avenged the wrong done to them. We delivered the mighty into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few, the impure into the hands of the pure, the wicked into the hands of the righteous, the wanton sinners into the hands of those who occupy themselves with your Torah. Friends, we pointed out in the past, in previous years, that this prayer is not referring to Jews and the Greeks. The prayer in general is, but not this part. This part that I just read about the mighty and the weak, the many, the few, the impure into the hands of the pure, the wicked into the hands of the righteous, and so on. These last descriptions are referring to Jews. For the majority of Jews had, in fact, welcomed the Greek overtures and considered the Maccabees, the Chashmonoim, to be not merely a nuisance, but stirring up anti-Semitism. Most Jews were opposed to the uprising. And so here we are thanking God that notwithstanding that they were a minority, they prevailed, they being the Maccabees, the Chashmonoim. Okay, let's continue reading the text of the Thanksgiving prayer. You made a great and holy name for yourself in your world and effected a great deliverance and redemption for your people to this very day. Then your children entered the shrine of your house, cleansed your temple. Now, the word temple, which Hebrew term is heichal, that's referring to the heart of the Beit HaMikdash. It was a very tall, imposing building that was roofed. Most of the Beis HaMikdash complex was open-aired, roofless. This had a roof, and as you know, it was comprised of 3 sections: the entrance, the holy, and the Holy of Holies. The menorah was lit daily in the section called the Holy. So again, then your children entered the shrine of your house, cleansed your temple, that's the heichal. Specifically, literally the portal, the sanctuary. The prayer goes on to say, purified your sanctuary, that's the general complex, kindled lights in your holy courtyards, and instituted these 8 days of Chanukah to give thanks and praise to your great name. This morning's question is, what is meant by kindled lights in your holy courtyards? Just mentioned moments ago that the menorah was situated not in the courtyard, which is an open area. Actually, there were 3 courtyards. There's the priestly courtyard, there's the Israelite courtyard, and there's the women's courtyard, which was the largest section of the entire temple complex. But that's not where the menorah is lit. The menorah is lit in the Heichal. The word he used here is temple, in the section called the Holy, just outside the Holy of Holies. So how does it say, what does it mean here in this Al Hanisim prayer that they kindled lights in your holy courtyards? That's not where the menorah is lit. It's an obvious question. And here's a suggested answer, which we will reject. But this is a classic answer offered by the great Chassam Sofer, Rabbi Moishe Sofer of Budapest, who lived almost 200 years ago, a scholar and saint of renown. So he writes as follows. He suggests, in answering this question, which is extremely puzzling, he suggests that, well, they couldn't light the menorah in the Heichal, let's use that Hebrew term now, the Heichal, because it was full of idolatrous objects. And therefore they had to light it in the courtyard. This is permissible because the law is that even a non-Kohen can light the menorah. And Maimonides rules, that means that the menorah could be lit in the courtyard and then later put, if possible, placed back in the Heichal. But it can be lit in the courtyard. That's where the priests lit it. Why? Because the Heichal was full of impurity, idolatrous objects. Furthermore, says the Chassam Sofer, this allowed for the publicity of the miracle. Because had they lit the menorah in the place it's normally lit, in the Heichal, nobody would have seen the miracle, except for the priests, the Koyanim. Because the general population, unless bringing an offering, the general population may not enter into the Ezra's Koyanim, the priestly courtyard, and certainly not into the Heichal. So this was lit in the general courtyard, the men's or the women's courtyard, and this allowed the miracle to be widely known. Everybody saw that the oil lasted not one night, but there was enough oil for 8 nights. That's his attempted answer. However, there are a number of problems with this theory, with this suggestion. Number one, the Greeks had contaminated the entire complex, not just the Heichal, but the courtyards too. So why would it have been, why would they have lit in the courtyards, assuming that they had been cleansed or were free of idolatry, when there were idolatrous images everywhere? Furthermore, the simple words, not translation, the simple words of this prayer don't seem to support this theory, because it says, look what it says. Then your children entered the shrine of your house, cleansed your temple, purified your sanctuary, and then kindled the lights. So they kindled the lights after having cleansed your temple. That's the Heichal. So it was already clean. So why is he say his suggestion they need in the courtyards? Because the Heichel wasn't cleansed. It was cleansed. The sequence here is cleanse the temple, then kindle the lights. So his suggestion is not supported by the text itself. That's a second objection. A third objection with this suggested explanation is, why does the prayer use the plural? Kindled lights in your holy courtyards. It's one courtyard, either the men's courtyard or the women's courtyard. It's one menorah that they lit in one place. So why does the prayer use the plural? In Hebrew, kindled lights in your holy courtyards. One menorah, one location. So therefore, because of these three objections to this suggested answer, we are compelled to search further for our answer. So the Rebbe says, in suggesting an answer, a most novel answer and startling, because the answer is going to beget only greater problems, which we shall resolve, God willing. And that is, in this prayer, the Al Hanisim, the words kindled lights in your holy courtyards, it's not referring to the lighting of the menorah, but simply to the kindling of lights in celebration of the great miracle and salvation. Because that's the Jewish way. We celebrate with lights. A shul must be lit up. That's the mitzvah. The glory of God is in light, not in darkness. We illuminate the darkness. So the prayer is simply describing how they celebrated. They celebrated by instituting 8 days of thanksgiving and praise and the kindling of lights in the whole temple complex. Where did they light the lights? Everywhere, in all of the courtyards. And there's a precedence for this in the temple itself. On Sukkot, the happiest Yom Tov of the year, every night of Sukkot, they drew the water from the spring of salvation, the Mei HaShiloach, and they poured it at dawn, accompanying the daily morning sacrifice. They poured it on the altar. You all know that's referred to as Simchas Beis HaShe'eva, the joy of the house of drawing. And the Talmud, the Mishnah described that the joy was so intense. How was the joy? Singing and dancing, and the lighting up of the lighting up of candelabras, many lights, not the menorah. All kinds of menorahs lit in the afternoon, every day towards the end of the day. Here they lit up all night and all day, many lights, so much so the whole Jerusalem was lit up like day. So brightly, a woman could distinguish between one kind of grain and another. All to say, that's the Jewish way. That's what we do. We light lights. That answers why it says courtyards, because they lit these lights everywhere. That answers the sequence of events described here. Your children enter the shrine of your house, cleansed your temple, that's the Heichel, purified your sanctuary, that's all the courtyards, and kindled lights in your holy courtyards and instituted prayer, all as an expression of their celebration and thanksgiving. However, as I said, this now begets another problem. Gewalt. according to the way we now understand this prayer, is not referring to the lighting of the menorah, but simply to the kindling of lights and celebration. Gewalt. In this prayer, there's no mention at all of the miracle of the oil. All it talks about is how the few overcame the many. They cleansed the temple, they rededicated it. Where's the miracle of the oil? That's a very good question. In order to answer that, let's put aside this prayer for a moment, and let me read to you what the Talmud has to say about Chanukah. And the text goes basically like this. The Talmud in Tractate Shabbos asks the question, what's Chanukah? What's the question of the Talmud? What's the miracle? What miracle happened on Chanukah that the sages established the 8 days of Chanukah? And this is the only place in the entire Talmud that talks about the whole story of Chanukah. This is it. Listen to what it says. What's Chanukah? So the Talmud, the Gemara says in Tractate Shabbos, should get a tractate and read it to you. Should get a Talmud and read it to you. You know what? Let's get it up here on my phone. That'll save time. You type in my Chanukah, that's all you got to do. The words of the Gemara, and here it is. That's why we have Google. Let me read to you exactly what the Talmud says. What's Chanukah? Answers the Gemara, our sages taught, on the 25th of Kislev begins 8 days of Chanukah. No eulogies, no fasting. Why not? Because when the Greeks entered into the Heichal, they contaminated all the oils of the Heichal. And when the royal house of the Hashmonaim overpowered them and defeated them, they searched and they didn't find only one cruse of oil that lay there with the seal of the high priest, and there wasn't enough oil in this cruse only for 1 day. A miracle happened, and they lit from this cruse of oil for 8 days or 8 nights. The next year, the following year, the sages established these days as Yom Tov, not in the strict sense of no work, but good days, literally. Yom Tov, Hallel and Eidah, praise and thanksgiving. Very nice. What's our question? I'll tell you our question. Gewalt. Where is the miracle here? It's not highlighted at all that it was a huge miracle that this small, tiny group of Jews, Yochanan, Kohen Gadol, and his 5 sons, that was basically the few joined them, drove out the mightiest army in the world, vastly outnumbered. Hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands to one. Not hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands to one. That's the main miracle. Gewalt, that should be the main miracle. We were saved. The occupiers left. If you read this text, you have no clue that there was any miracle here. It's almost incidental. All we talk about is the miracle of the oil. It just puts that miracle in context. When did it happen? When the Hashmonaim drove out the Greeks. But if you don't have any background knowledge, you just read the Talmud here, you might assume that the Hashmonaim had even a greater army. All it says is the house of the Hashmonaim rose up, overpowered, and defeated them. Maybe they were superior. There's no indication of a miracle here. Gewalt. How could the Talmud ignore such a thing? and talk exclusively about the oil, the miracle of the oil. Surely the main thing is the miracle of the battlefield. That's a bigger miracle. Friends, you can surely appreciate that if that wouldn't have happened and we'd remained under Greek occupation, who knows if we would be, from the natural order, if we'd be sitting here today having this discussion. That's the miracle that God saves us. Like we say in the Haggadah, every generation they rise up. And this was one huge such occasion to destroy us. And God saves us. The Talmud ignores all of that. Doesn't describe it as being miraculous at all. Just glosses over it, kind of gets to, it's just a time frame to get to the miracle of the oil. Friends, and if the miracle of the oil didn't happen, no, we're very grateful. It's wonderful that the oil lasted 8 days. But if it didn't, what would have happened? Nothing. 8 days later, they'll have pure oil. As we've explained every year, and you surely remember why the miracle happened for 8 days. No. And if there wasn't the miracle, 8 days later, they'll have pure oil. In Yiddish, the Welt wird nicht untergehen. The world's not going to go under. We're very thankful. It's a beautiful miracle. It's a real wow miracle. One cruise of oil lasts 8 days. Thank you very much. It's beautiful. But I'm asking you, did this compare to the miracle of saving Jewish survival? Does this compare to the miracle of the small band of Hashmonaim, unpopular amongst Jews even, and they drive out this superpower who abandoned Israel? That's the bigger miracle. So Chassidus asks on the Talmud, how is it possible that Talmud ignores all of this? So now we're left, what are we left with, friends? We got a question on, we have a question on the Thanksgiving praise that we say, according to our conclusion, there's no mention of the oil. And then we have the reverse question on the Talmud. The Talmud doesn't mention the victory of the battlefield, which is what it talks about here. So this is very strange. It's very strange. So in the Al Hanisim, that we say 3 times a day or 4 times a day in Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, and at the Shabbos meal, the benching, or if you eat bread during the week, you'll say it also during the week. There's no, according to our final conclusion, there's no mention of the miracle of the oil. That raises an eyebrow. Then you open the Talmud, and with the Gemara, the Talmud tells the story. We're having fun. I hope you enjoy this. The Talmud tells the story of what? Of Chanukah. There's no mention of the miracle of the battlefield. Like, what's going on? What's going on? Like, they're separate. In Al Hanisim, it's only the war. In the Gemara, it's only the oil. How does the Gemara, the real question is, how does the Gemara ignore the miracle of the battlefield? That's the most important one. That's the critical one. Jewish survival. That we're here today to light the menorah. And as I said before, and if there was no miracle with the oil, in the big picture, it wouldn't change anything. 8 days later, they light the menorah. Thank you very much. So it's very puzzling. The Gemara is really puzzling. So friends, the answer to all of the above, the answer to all of the above is as follows. It's a very deep answer. And there's a lot of detail. But we'll just try and convey the gist of it. And that is, as you all know, the story of Chanukah, the battle with the Greeks, the occupying Greek forces or presence after Alexander died, was a spiritual one. The Greeks had no designs on physically persecuting the Jews, and certainly not killing and destroying them. It's not what they wanted. As you all know, it was a spiritual battle. Let's examine that for a moment. The Greeks were not adverse to spirituality. Spirituality is beautiful. Everybody knows that. So what was the problem when I say it was a spiritual battle? Here's the thing. The Greeks said, Yiddishkeit is beautiful. It's a beautiful and deep philosophy, a beautiful way to live. Shabbos is beautiful. Mikveh is beautiful. Jewish children brought up on the principles of honor your father and mother. It's a beautiful thing. Yiddishkeit's beautiful. And the Greeks worshipped beauty in all of its forms. So what's the problem? They didn't mind that Jews should observe Judaism. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the Greeks refused to accept that the essence of Judaism is beyond all rationale. It's beyond beautiful. It's sacred. It's holy. And it's beyond understanding. At the core, as much as we understand and offer rationale and explanations, libraries upon libraries upon libraries. That's all the packaging. The essence of every mitzvah is divine and beyond understanding. Let's rephrase that. The Greeks didn't mind believing in God. Just depends who your God is. If your God is a super intelligent being, the designer of this complex and beautiful universe, by all means, worship him, pay homage to him, fulfill commandments that come from the intelligent super being. But that's not who God is. Hashem is beyond super divine intelligence, infinitely beyond. He's utterly beyond understanding, not just human understanding, any kind of understanding. It's beyond. Beyond. God is beyond. Beyond, because there's things you and I don't understand, but somehow the great intelligence can. So it's beyond me. That's the kind of God they admitted and embraced and encouraged. We're saying beyond. No such thing, they argued. There's no such thing. Everything can be explained. You can today, you'll understand tomorrow. It's only beyond you temporarily, only beyond because we haven't evolved, discovered. In the end, we will unravel every mystery. Because life is finite ultimately. Life points to intelligent design, and that's as far as we go. God is the intelligent designer. And the Jew says, no. The intelligent designer is a role that God has chosen to assume, to descend, to become, to descend, to assume, but he is beyond. In other words, as we've said many times, for the Greeks, God is a creator, and for the Jews, he's the creator. And the difference is not merely where there is more than one, but rather a creator means that's what he does. He's the great artist. And when God expresses himself, his talent and his wisdom, the result is this incredible universe. That's the Greek view. That's spirituality. The gods. But Torah, the Jew says, no, he's the creator, not a creator. Being a creator doesn't define him. It's a role he chose to do. He's utterly beyond. That was the war. That was the war, the essence of God himself, of holiness beyond all rationale. And because the Jews resisted, the Greeks had no choice but to use force. But the force, which in the end threatened our physical existence, only happened because of our spiritual resistance. As I said earlier, most Jews didn't grasp the subtlety here and thought the Greeks were our best friends and the best thing since sliced bread. It was only Matisyahu that understood that this was an attack on the essence of truth, on God himself, on the essence of Judaism, on its very soul. Most Jews didn't see it that way. So, because the battle, now let's try and understand what's going on. Because the battle, the real war was a purely spiritual battle. Because we resisted, there was also a physical battle. But that was only a consequence of the spiritual one. Therefore, we divide our praises. We divide our thanksgiving and don't muddle the two, because there is one battle and a consequence that only happened because of the original. There would never have been a physical battle if Jews had accepted the Greek philosophy and ideology, that reason reigns supreme, that all can be explained. Everything in the end is natural. Even spirituality is part of nature. Had they not resisted that, there would never have been a battle, never been decrees, never been oppression. So to make this clear, our sages said, look, we're going to separate the thanksgiving. The Gemara, the Talmud, when it asks the question, what's Chanukah, deliberately glosses over the physical battle component, because that's not what Chanukah is at the core. What's Chanukah? Chanukah is represented by the miracle of the oil and the lights. They contaminated the lights. The Greeks didn't say don't light the menorah. Light it with impure oil, they said. Impure oil? There's no such thing as impure oil. Put it under a microscope, examine it with the most rigorous scientific instruments. It's the same oil as pure oil. Someone touched the cruse, the flask, opened the tub. Narishkeit. Use this oil. Yeah, because this is symbolic of their whole position. The spirituality you speak of that is super rational, can't be apprehended, can't be seen, can't be explained. It doesn't exist, they said. It just doesn't exist. That was the whole battle. The oil, they contaminated. We found one cruise of pure oil and it lasted for 8 days till we could make new pure oil. That was the whole symbol. That's why the Gemara, when the Gemara Talmud asks, what's Chanukah? All it talks about is the oil. However, there was, as a result of the resistance, there was a physical victory. Yes. So we will dedicate a separate prayer to them. That's going to be said 3 times a day, at least. And we're not going to mention there the miracle of the oil, because that's going to confuse the two. The battlefield only happened because of the spiritual resistance. It's a separate. And so we thank Hashem and we thank him for saving us in the battlefield. It's not appropriate then to also thank him for the miracle of the oil. No, the miracle of oil is the essence of Chanukah. That's the essence of Chanukah. The attack on you. Because we defended you, they attacked us. So when we talk about us and saving, you follow. Because they attacked you and we defended you, therefore they attacked us. But that's, if they wouldn't have defended you, they wouldn't have attacked us. They wouldn't have resisted. So to make it clear what the essence of Chanukah is, and the spin-off, we thank separately. We light the menorah. That's when we celebrate the spiritual, the real essence of the whole miracle, the whole struggle, the whole victory. It's a spiritual victory, a triumph of our faith. But there was also, because of that, they started to attack us physically. Oh, yes, we must thank for that as well. But that has to be clearly separated from the central struggle. It wasn't two, it was one struggle. That therefore, a spin-off spawned the physical. I hope that is clear. And that answers another thing. Right, so we're clear now why in the Siddur, when we're thanking God for the battlefield, we don't talk about the miracle of the oil, because we're thanking for the battlefield here. There was a consequence that wouldn't have ever happened had we not defended your honor and fought for our faith. So that gets its own thank you. Talmud, which we quoted from here. The Talmud talks about what Chanukah is. It addresses the core essence issue. Spiritual battle. Battle of faith versus reason. What's supreme? What's the ultimate reality? Okay, I hope that's clear. So this also explains why, friends, as I kind of said before, I didn't spell it out, I will do so now. The whole miracle with the oil was not necessary. Halachically was not necessary. Not only because no saw the light 8 days later, much more so, much more than that. Because the halacha is, if everybody's impure, go ahead and use impure oil. That's the halacha. So they could have lit the menorah with impure oil that they would make. They're all impure because there was death everywhere. It takes 8 days to go through the process of purification. But till those 8 days, the halacha is no problem. Use impure oil. So why did God make the miracle? Why did God make the miracle? It's not even justified in halacha. There's no need for it. The menorah could have and should have been lit and would have been lit with impure oil until 8 days later when they make pure oil. That's the point. Hashem did a miracle that had no justification, no reason, even in Torah, to express that Torah is beyond reason, God's beyond reason. And the miracle had no justification logically. There's no reason for it, didn't have to be. That's the point. No reason for it. There is the whole battle. That Yiddishkeit at its core is beyond rationale, beyond reason. It is sacred and godly, like God himself. Is there a reason for God's existence? Why does God exist? Of course not. He is. That's it. He is because he is. Chas v'sholom, there's a reason for God's existence. Yiddishkeit is just like an expression of God himself. It's the expression of his essential being beyond all reason. And therefore the miracle didn't have a reason, didn't have to be. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. That's the whole true victory. Furthermore, that explains why it's beautiful insight coming now. With this we will conclude. Hashem wanted to show his presence is beyond all reason. There's many ways you could do that, many miracles you could perform. In fact, there were 10 miracles that happened every day when the first temple stood. This is the second temple. So make one of those miracles as recounted in Ethics of Our Fathers. Why the miracle with the menorah? Why the miracle with what? With the light. Make the miracle with the altar. Many miracles surrounding the altar. The smoke goes up and the wind doesn't move it. I mean, many miracles. Hashem could show his presence. Why with light? Answer, because of all the things in the world. Light is the most unworldly. In fact, I'm no physicist, but we haven't understood light. Is it a wave? Is it a particle? It remains the most ethereal and mysterious. What's the substance of light? Unlike sound, sound is real. odor is even more concrete, the actual particles that you're smelling. When something emits an odor, when something emits a sound. Friend, when something emits a sound, if it makes a sound, then it's going to be weakening over time because there's some kind of friction, some kind of sound. Light bouncing off an object. The object remains completely unchanged. Light is the most ethereal of all things, the least physical of everything in our world. And that's why God, when he wants to reveal to us something which is beyond worldly, completely beyond reason, beyond the limitations of the world, what's the medium he chose to express himself in the story of Chanukah? In the medium of light, because therein lies the whole battle. All to say, my dear friends, thank you for joining. Hope you have a remaining inspiring Chanukah. Chanukah never ends because 8 is the infinite, right? 7 are the 7 days of the week. Cycle repeats. The world turns. Day. Month, year. 8, beyond time, beyond reason. Again, another connection. That was the whole battle. Again, for the Greeks, everything in the end could be explained. If not today, tomorrow. We know, on the contrary, that everything can never be explained at the root. All comes from Hashem is totally beyond all reason. That's the core. The number 8, the infinite. And many other symbolism to the number 8 as well. So all to say is what I said. I wish you an inspiring and happy rest of Chanukah. It's forever. Chanukah never ends. Enjoy the donuts. Enjoy the latkes in good health with your family and friends, if not physically, which I hope you are, at least on Zoom. Thank you for joining.
Happy Hanukkah, Rabbi.
Happy Hanukkah to everyone.